Hello, friends. I've got some pro tips for losers. In particular, losers who have total and utter panic attacks before leaving the house and freak out whenever they have to drive in the city, the big scary city. And also losers who are on unemployment, which I have been up until now. Presently, I am trying to get an extension on my unemployment so I can get training, so I can be an office jockey, not just a bag boy. Anyway, pro tip for driving when you are totally freaking out and feel like you might crap all over yourself. The Mad Max Fury Road soundtrack I have found is the best antidote to panic attacks when you're driving. Panic attacks I'm talking about are not the ones where you think about dying or where you think you're literally going to die. You do think about dying, but some people I heard this from Norm Macdonald, maybe it was David Letterman. Proper panic attack is like full-scale paranoia, think you're gonna die. And what I experience is more like a standard, just, I'm a pussy and I freak out over everything. When I drive in the city, I super freak out, and I found that the Mad Max soundtrack really works well for me because it matches my level of intensity and fear, heightens my awareness. It's like I'm on meth. I would like to pull out a few tracks and show you the best ones and take out the ones that don't work so well. Keep those separate. You don't want some downer of a track bringing you down. But here's a little tip. If you're going through the soundtrack and trying to quickly assemble a playlist of songs to get you pumped up, anything high energy at the start is good. Sorry about my speech impediment. Anything that sounds soft but has a synthesizer, like an arpeggiator going, that's generally good. If you hear sweeping strings, don't even bother listening to it unless you have time to really think about it, because anything that has like string sweeps or orchestral sweeps or whatever they're called, it's not good. It will make you anxious if you're anything like me, and you will not be able to cope, and you will likely crash your car into a homeless person or a regular person. Other thing, let's see. There's one track in particular that was like called We Are Not Toys or something. Skip that one and the two after that. Those do not work. The rest of the soundtrack is super good. It's really good because what's going on inside of your brain and your whole body, it's like you have a storm inside of you. And when you drive, everybody else seems to be aggressive and hostile and deadly. And that soundtrack, it really works well. I still haven't seen the whole movie. I've watched part of it. I ran out of my rental period. I'd really love to see it again. I think it was really good what I saw. People call it a feminist movie, which I ignore that, because I think feminism is a scourge. A scourge. A scourge? I don't think it's so good. I'm not into the whole like immunity from criticism thing that seems to constitute a lot of activism. When you're immune from criticism, it creates vacuums, power vacuums that dangerous people can fill. So I do think a lot of progressivism is very dangerous. If you can't criticize people, you create the potential for abuse and power vacuums. Second thing, unemployment. So I went to the unemployment office today because I'm trying to get my extension so I can go to proper training and learn to be, in addition to a bag boy, also an office boy. Love to get people coffee and things like that. When I went in, it was like it was like another world. A world of people openly, like just crying out angrily. Like there were multiple people just fed up, slamming things around, shouting, screaming. Angry people. One seemed dangerous and scary, and this is something you see a lot among certain populations, people who are poor, below the poverty line, who are on the verge of being homeless or who already are homeless. They seem really dangerous, and it just like a switch, they go to crying, or they go close to crying because they are so they feel so hopeless and scared, really. This guy's talking about his kids and stuff, and it's hard to tell really when you're being manipulated and when they believe it, when they don't believe it. There's just a big problem with homelessness here. And there's a big problem with the kind of mindset you have when you're in that position. I don't like the term white privilege, but I do enjoy some sort of privilege because I know how to be soft-spoken, and I know how to kind of level with people when things are really crazy. And I've also been in a lot of crazy situations. When I was a kid, I was in special ed, so there were daily explosive occurrences. I've worked at security in a park, and similarly, you're dealing with explosive people, and you kind of learn to see their humanity, and you learn that not everybody who doesn't have money or who looks a certain way, you realize they're not all on the verge of killing you. They're on the verge of something a lot of the time, but it's not about hurting you a lot of the time. But they can be, so be careful. If you can't get a sense for it, don't risk it. I guess my pro tip about unemployment is more general, but I went in there, this guy's freaking out, and I'm kind of freaking out a little bit internally because I can't get a hold of anybody. They put me on the phone. It's the same phone number I called before, and I was just like, God, this is intolerable. So I went online and I just started looking up message boards, and I found finally people who are providing numbers where you speak to a human, and I spoke to a human on the phone within a minute. Whoa! And it was just a matter of being privileged with the perspective of having a couple $1,000s in the bank and knowing that I'm not going to be homeless, and knowing that I can think this through and not yell at the person on the phone. And that was really important, and I just used all that stuff I've learned about manners and everything. And when you get to a certain point, I think there are a lot of blind spots that people have, and they don't realize they're blind spots. I might only be making sense to myself. My point is, if you don't have the wherewithal to think about your circumstances, look at somebody who does and just try to copy what they do. Because I'm well off enough right now that I'm certainly worried about losing those benefits. But I wasn't as worried as this guy, and this guy was out of control and he was yelling and screaming. And I know that's not going to help him. At least not in the long run. So just keep an eye out for the people who know how to talk to people. Because that's what I did. I watched what I said. I was polite, etc. And don't forget the internet. I forgot the internet because I felt hopeless. And it was like watching this guy who's more hopeless than me made me realize, okay, I've got to keep it together because somebody else doesn't have it together, so somebody has to have it together. How can I get a hold of these people that I need to get a hold of? And I did. So for me, when I'm in the midst of chaos, when everybody else freaks out, that's when I start to calm down. When nobody else is freaking out, I freak out. So pro tips: listen to Mad Max when you drive. Similar soundtracks. Make a playlist. Angry, aggressive, fucking full throttle testosterone music. It should sound like a fucking robot's cock. Oops, I forgot I don't swear. Unemployment. Talk like a normal person.